10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 324. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 324 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. We are going to continue our series on the great Charlie Parker this week and dive into two very, very specific things that he does that I think are going to inform your playing and line writing and all that good stuff. But before we jump into the episode, as always, wanted to remind you this is a listener-supported podcast, which means we do not have any advertisements on the show except for this short word from your creator at the beginning here. Instead, what we do is we rely on listeners just like you to support us in the form of a small monthly donation. We do that through the Patreon platform, and in return, you do get a PDF and audio examples for every single episode. So if you'd like to find out more about what you get and how to support the show, go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and get yourself signed up today. I want to give a quick shout out to some new patrons. Thank you to our new $5 patrons, Roy, Willis, Brewbells, Louisa. Thank you so much. Our new $3 patron, Daniel. And thank you to Tomotaka for upping your pledge from the $3 level to the $5 level. Welcome all of you to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family, and of course to everyone over there that is supporting us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not do this without you. So again, that's 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners for instant access to all the materials. All right, so let's dive into today's topic. So we've already talked about a couple of very, very common practices that Charlie Parker uses in his improvisation. And this week we're going to talk about another one. These two things that I'm about to show you are very, very, very specific, but I think that they can really benefit you when you're thinking about how to construct your lines and how to make them more interesting. So let's jump in. If you have the PDF, I want you to look at example number 1 and example number 2. And I'm going to talk about what's going on with these, and then we're going to listen to them. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is I want you to notice the two notes in each of those examples that are marked in red on your PDF. And what's happening here is they are both over a concert G7 flat 9 chord. And what Charlie Parker is doing is he's playing the third, and then he's playing the flat 9. So third to flat 9. Now, what's interesting about this is that he's displacing the octave when he goes from that third to the flat 9. So let's listen to example number 1, and then I'll talk a little bit more about why this is such a cool sound. Here's example number 1. So hopefully you can hear where that jump occurs from the third up to the flat 9. Now here's what makes it interesting. Charlie Parker could have chosen to keep going down from the third to the flat 9. And what that would have resulted in is the interval of a minor third, going from that third to the flat 9. But what he does, and he does this all the time, and it really, really makes his playing just unbelievable, is that instead of creating an interval of a minor third moving in the same direction, what he does instead is he displaces that flat 9 up an octave, and that results in the interval of a major 6. And it also completely changes the direction of the line. What you're going to notice is that the line is coming down in both of these examples, and then when he plays that third up to the flat 9, first of all, we get a much more interesting interval. And second of all, we change directions, which creates a lot of interest in our playing. It makes our playing a little bit more unpredictable, and therefore leaves our listener wanting to hear more and more and more. So again, two things are making this very, very interesting. First of all, instead of the interval of a minor third, we get the interval of a major sixth. And second of all, we're changing directions. We were descending, and then all of a sudden we get this really cool angular ascending note, and then we keep going with the line. So let's check out example number 2, which is very, very, very similar to example number 1. He uses the exact same thing. He's just coming into it in a bit of a different way. So you can hear over the concert G7 flat 9 chord, he plays exactly the same thing, right? It's actually the same 4 notes that he's playing. So you can tell that he really, really likes this device. And if you go through the Omnibook or you transcribe some Charlie Parker, you're going to notice this all over the place. Here's how you can practically use this in your own playing or line writing or practicing. So going from the third to the flat 9 over a dominant chord is something that we all love to do. We're going to do that in so many different situations. What you want to do is, whenever you feel the need to do that, or let's say you're writing out a piece of vocabulary, I want you to displace that flat 9 up an octave. And I think this will really open up your ears to a new sound and make your lines a lot more interesting. So there's the first device that he's using. Now let's move on to example number 3 and example number 4. And it's the same concept, but Charlie Parker's using it in a different way. So again, I've got 2 notes marked in red on example number 3 and example number 4. And what you're going to notice on both of these is it's still over a dominant chord. This time it's over a concert C7 chord. And this time Charlie Parker is moving from the third down to the 5th. So again, we get this really, really interesting reversal of intervals where he could have chosen to go up from the third to the 5th, resulting in the interval of a minor third. But instead, what he's doing is he's going from the third down to the 5th, which again results in the interval of a major sixth. So you're starting to see a pattern here. Charlie Parker not only likes displacing octaves, but he actually loves using that interval of a major sixth. So let's check out example number 3. So what you'll notice in this is he's actually not changing direction. In this line, he's coming down, and then when he gets to that major third, he keeps going down, obviously, but the interval's a lot wider. Look at the 4 notes before the downbeat of the second measure, and notice that they are all either whole steps or half steps. So what he's doing is he's not using the direction change to create interest. He's using the fact that he's using a much, much wider interval to create the interest. And then after he hits the 5th, then he does change directions. So there's like so much that you can dive into in terms of what's going on here. But at its core, it's pretty simple. We want to mix up how wide our intervals are, and we want to think about reversing intervals so that it's not always super predictable. Instead of always going up a third, think about going down a sixth. So let's check out example number 4. It's the exact same thing over the concert C7 chord, but he comes into it in a bit of a different way. So again, we're hearing that characteristic sound of a wider interval, a bunch of narrow intervals followed by a much wider one that's going to keep you on your toes and keep you listening to the solo. So again, with this one, anytime you feel like you want to go from the third up to the 5th, consider going from the third down to the 5th and see what that does to your lines. It may even lead you in a different direction after you play that different different interval, it has a way of stopping your thinking and starting it over from a different perspective. So just another amazing thing that we can learn from the genius of Charlie Parker. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Remember, if you want to grab the PDF, which I highly recommend, go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and you will get instant access to this PDF and every single other one that we've ever put out, which is quite a few at this point. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Hope you're learning something, and we will see you next week with another brand new episode. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Bye.